Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out part 2 of Benny Explains the Multiverse Tales original series and lore. Let's hop in and get straight to it.
Benny Sharp is back again, baby, with an arm that can waggle around and a slightly bigger head than usual. So, what's cooking, good lookins? And for once, I ain't saying that to Champ, I'm saying it to all you lovely folks out there who's back for another round of me summarizing everything you need to know to understand and be caught up on Popcross original stories. This
Yep,
here is
that's
part
why I'm
2
here.
of a video that was gonna be one video, and now, plot twist, it's gonna be 3 videos. Is
3!
that stretching this concept a bit thin? Maybe. But the more time Pop has to work on these, the more animated screen time you get from good old BS here. No, wait, I didn't think that through. Let's not make that a canonical nickname, actually.
It's fine, Benny. Nothing you're doing today is canon. The canonical version of you doesn't know all the information that you're talking about in these videos, and probably wouldn't reference things like Green Lantern and Has-Been Hotel like you did in the last video.
Right,
Yeah.
good point, sure.
So, go on. Take it away, Mr. BS.
Alright, it's fine as long as it ain't canon. Or make it canon, I don't care. Anyway, now we're launching into part 2. So I'm gonna be covering all the Multiverse Tales original series and important plot points.
And I
this happened
reacted to
ever
all
since
of
Popcross
these.
started focusing more on original
Except
series
Vigilance.
and stories. If you ain't seen the last video covering the Multiverse Tales timeline up to this point, I'd recommend jumping back over to that first. But if you're still here, then
I
great,
did.
we can launch into part 2. And hopefully
Let's
Pop
go.
will give me a flashier part 2 title screen than he gave me for part 1. Popcross? Flashier. Alright, well played, Pop.
Yeah, funny.
Now I'm gonna kick this off with the series The Summoner's Beasts. This little adventure follows
I
Tayron
liked
Janova, brought onto the Sharp Gang originally by his now girlfriend Biomet Kayla. Formerly, Tayron was known as the Beast Chronicler, now the Beast Summoner. At the start
That
of this
was
story,
cool.
he was still the overseer of his realm, Dimension T905, a role he got at the end of the Battle for the Beast World storyline. His world, T905, is a fantasy world where pretty much all of Popcross's Things as Dragons and Things as
Yeah.
Fantasy Beasts episodes take place. Those episodes Tayron is the narrator of. It
Most
turns out
commonly.
one of the Archon demons, the fantasy genre one, Phantarel, has secretly been living in Tayron's dimension, as it was always her favorite one to watch and create stuff for from the non-physical realm.
She
She has been
enjoyed
living
it.
in the town called Seathiel as a sorceress named Toralai. When Tayron figures this out, because a monster from his world is coming to smite her, but then she smites it first, she reveals that she wants Tayron's overseer abilities, because an Archon with the overseer powers of a certain realm is the only thing that can lock the other Archon demons out of that realm.
Yep.
And she's pretty sure her siblings ain't gonna be too
One
happy
is
about
dead,
the fact
though.
that she's not doing what they're doing and is smashing up the multiverse, and instead is just chilling in this realm. See, while she ain't exactly
Yeah.
a pillar of morality
having
like
fun.
yours truly, it turns out she is a lot less destruction happy than her other Archons. She hadn't even attacked any other universes that had sentient life. So she makes a deal with Tayron to basically
Pretty
have a
good deal.
giant Pokemon battle with him. Tayron has the power to make bonds with creatures from his world and apparently others to summon them to fight with him.
Apparently,
He can
yeah.
see through their eyes, hear what they're hearing, but if they get hurt, he gets hurt too. Anyway,
Yeah, that's the
Toralai
downside.
had her own squad of demon general monsters and wanted to have a tournament with Tayron. Winner takes the overseer powers for his world. And also if Tayron wins, Toralai willingly lets the Reaper rid her of her head. One more Archon down. Tayron agreed,
would've
but was
been.
sensing that there was more good in Toralai than would be expected from an Archon. Regardless, he starts gathering his team. That's what he's doing for a bunch of the story. He has a little adventure with Dresden that's super fun.
Yeah,
He has
a
one
little
with
thing
me and
here.
Astro where we meet Mr. Helicopter and... Pop, seriously, this story was a banger. Why didn't you make this one a book?
I know. Check in with me later. It's a maybe. I've got a big backlog of book stuff to do right now, but
That's
yeah,
fine.
Maybe.
Folks is gonna hold you to that even if it is just a maybe, so get ready for the comments. Anyway, we also learn in this story that the Archons have a deal between them, that whoever finds Tassa and brings her to their leader, the horror genre Archon demon Eldrorok, gets to be the one to invade or take over Dimension M308.
The
universe they were
mytholethal.
tricked into giving Tassa the God Overseer powers for all those thousands of years ago. They don't know that Astra and the Shop Gang have Tassa locked up in A016's pocket dimension, and is keeping an eye on her with the plan to let her live out the rest of her life in isolation as punishment for being notoriously terrible.
Even though that is going to still take a long ass time.
One of the other Archons, the sci-fi Archon Cypheramov, one who has a weird
Sci-fi,
obsession with
okay.
invading fantasy realms despite being the sci-fi Archon, decides to tick off her sister Toralei and invades Tehran's universe, knowing Toralei has been chilling there. Toralei teams up with the whole shop gang to fight back against Cypheramov.
And the
but
Reaper.
Toralei and Astra, who have some sparks flying between them by the way, come up with a little ruse. They think they can trap Cypheramov in the same place as Tassa, so that Alexis, as the Reaper, can then kill Cypheramov. So, they pretend that they're giving up Tassa to Cypheramov in exchange for her stopping her attack on Tehran's universe. They take her to the A016 pocket dimension where Tassa's kept and is completely depowered. Or so we thought.
Yep.
Unfortunately, none of us banked on the fact that Tassa
Shit hit the fan hard.
had anticipated both that she'd lose the multiversal orb someday and that the Archons would eventually get physical forms. So, while she still had the orb, she'd given herself a dormant ability, one that Astra didn't know to take away, that would allow Tassa to steal powers from the Archons if she got her hands on them when they had physical forms. How the heck did she pull this off and anticipate all this, Pop?
I don't know, but the easiest way of explaining is that she literally ate an Archon demon.
Rule of cool, Benny. Rule of cool.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Fair
Rule
enough.
of cool.
So Tassa manages to steal Cypheramov's powers, killing her, but also essentially becoming the new sci-fi Archon, taking control of Cypheramov's demons and having the power to make more. By the way, Cypheramov's demons are essentially made through a techno-organic demon virus that kills a being a creature it's attached to, but reanimates and upgrades them with sci-fi weapons and gabagoos under Cypheramov's control. Or,
you could kind of think about it like an upgrade zombie.
now under Tassa's control. Alexis ain't skittish about killing the Archons, but she is skittish about killing Tassa, even though she now has Archon powers, because, no matter how terrible, Tassa does technically have a soul. Alexis probably should have gotten over this whole thing a while ago, given Tassa is probably by now killing billions of people.
Yeah!
But if Alexis had gotten on board with the idea of killing Tassa at this point, then when Pantheon Reapers revs up, there wouldn't be a good reason for Alexis and Mythal to beat the absolute snot out of it.
Talked about this. No future stuff.
Oh, calm down.
Oh, that's gonna be awesome.
Anyway, wrapping up the Summoner's Beast story, Toralei decides to fully buddy up with the shop gang. She even agrees to use her powers of creation to help super speed up the making of the RAS Foundation inside a pocket dimension attached to Tehran's universe that the Archons can't get to. See, she and Tehran still have their little monster brawl because it would have sucked if the story ended without that. But regardless of the outcome, Tehran agreed to give Toralei the Overseer powers 14905 so that she could lock all the other Archons out of it for good and keep it safe. Tehran still kept his Beast Summoner powers though, and the story even wraps up with Toralei letting Tehran make one of her demon generals a summon of his. A spooky ghoul of a dragon that Tehran thought he'd helped kill a while back with Dresden.
Based off, of course, SCP-682, the indestructible reptile.
Help, despite the fact that its name is the unkillable dragon, Snagbasmor. Basically, the variant of SCP-682 from Tehran's universe.
Oh,
A dragon that he's only supposed to call on when he's facing an Archon, because Snagbasmor really wants to take on an Archon demon. But Tehran did actually call it in once near the end of the Trismegistus Academy, and it didn't get to take on an Archon, and it was pretty ticked off about that. But anyway, that brings us to the end of the Summoner's Beast storyline. Now we can jump over to Mythal Lethal. Now we've covered the most important stuff from this series in the Part 1 video, so this should be pretty quick. This story is set thousands of years before the main Shop Gang storylines. Tassa is running the show in M308 as the god Overseer, and has a squad of mythological deities helping her out, called her Imperium Pantheon. This is a world that is set in ancient mythological sort of time period, but where the gods of multiple different mythologies all exist at once. And they don't like the fact that gods in other pantheons from other regions of their world claim to be the god of fire, water, war, whatever. Most of them think they have the right to be called the one and only respective god of their element, a trait, or whatever. And at one point, they actually was the only one. Because see, technically, these gods were all from different universes at one point, but unbeknownst to most of them, with the multiversal orb, Tassa merged all their worlds together to make one unified realm of gods that she could rule over. This was something she had actually agreed to do for the Archons. It was part of their little dealio, but then she didn't follow through on the part where she gives them physical form so they could come into this world and rule it with her. Gods in M308 had been part of an experiment by the Archons to make worlds that essentially had multiple overseers in the forms of these deities. So all the gods from this now unified realm, unified physically I mean, not in terms of camaraderie and working together and
not until the main character
story, have overseer runes like an overseer, but not necessarily the exact same abilities as an overseer. Tassa was still the head honcho in charge of everything as the god overseer, but she was thriving on pitting gods and people who praised them against each other, dividing and conquering and whatnot. But, just before Tassa locked the Archons out of this universe with their own multiversal orb, they managed to create one last thing in this realm, a prophecy called the God Queller bloodline, or God Reaper bloodline, depending on who you ask, since this bloodline essentially produces mini versions of the actual Reaper.
Pretty much.
If a descendant in this realm is born from 7 generations of gods getting busy with each other, they would produce a God Queller. A god with white markings on them in place of the Overseer runes, who is the only type of being in existence that could actually kill a god, besides the legitimate Reaper. Again, these types of gods are unique to this universe. There are mythological gods and variants of them across the multiverse, but those ones ain't actually immortal in the same way as the ones from M308.
Oh,
Tassa
really now?
knew of this whole God Queller prophecy thing, and had various gods from her Imperium pantheon recruiting humans to go searching for them, under the guise that they was just looking for gods and demigods who wasn't compliant to Tassa's pack of goons. Our main character of this story, Ortis for Nemo, was one of these mortals working for Tassa's pantheon at the beginning. And at the beginning...
That's why it says God Slave bound into his arm there.
And he was a real cowardly kid. That is, until he met Mythil and her sister Lorna, and realized that they was both God Quellers. He ended up growing a pair and decided to turn on the Imperium pantheon, and turn on gods in general. Mythil didn't even realize she was a God Queller till Ortis told her, and once she found out, she was super on board with the idea of murdering a whole bunch of gods. For a heroic character, Mythil is really into doing murders. Cough in sharp contrast to Alexis' cough. Mythil's sister Lorna decided to hang back from the adventure Mythil and Ortis was headed off on because she was too cool for that sort of thing, but Ortis ended up bringing her in on it eventually later. Before that, though, some fun stuff like monster
If I remember correctly, that was around the Underworld era.
Fights happen, Mythil stole an Astra, which is a type of weapon Hindu deities use in this realm, for Ortis to use, called Astra, so he could actually hold his own in a fight against gods and monsters, and all the while they're getting tips and help from Ares, the Greek god of war, who, in this universe, is basically Kronk from the Emperor's New Groove, spinach puffs and all. And that's literally just because Popcross realized while finalizing the script for Chapter 2 of Mytholethal that he could sort of pull off a Patrick Warburton impression.
Right, the God Queller. The
God
Queller
for
Tarsus. God Queller chosen specifically to kill Tarsus. Tarsus God Queller.
That God Queller?
Now, while the Archons was supposed to be locked out of this world for good, they were able to slip their consciousnesses in here and there, and even ended up being able to talk to Ortis through Astra. Not that he knew who he was communicating with at first. When Mythil ends up getting captured by Tassa partway through the story and is taken to the Shinto underworld to be held as prisoner, and where it's revealed that Mythil is actually a descendant of Tassa, who Tassa decided to have born so that she could have someone by her side to kill off gods that wasn't behaving, the Archons did a little bit of whispering tips to Ortis to give him advice on how to handle the whole situation. Of course, that was only after he went back to get Lorna's help. He also gets some help from Ares and from this goddess named Amphenella, who can transform into a giantess, and is only really grudgingly an ally, because she ain't a fan of the Imperium Pantheon neither, but also doesn't love that Ortis blew up her farm, which technically isn't a farm, it's a ranch, but whatever.
So
Ortis, Ares, Amphenella, and Lorna invade the Shinto underworld, end up rallying a whole bunch of gods that Tassa's got trapped in there, with one of Ortis's many motivational speeches he gives in the book. He then,
including the original Zeus of the universe,
ends up alone in a confrontation against Tassa, and there he's convinced by the Archons to basically shoot Tassa in the face with a nuke arrow at point blank range and temporarily off himself. Doing that did break the multiversal orb that Tassa has been using to rule over everybody, so when Ortis's new god buddies that he'd rallied find him, they end up getting to snag a piece of it. Tassa gets away, but Mythil is freed, and Ortis, having basically just died, got to have a little chat with the Archon demons in their non-physical realm, where they lore dump on him most of the stuff I said earlier about the creation of the multiverse.
Right.
Still, they like that
Right.
Otis is trying to take out Tassa because they want her taken out too, so after a bit
Everyone
of
hates
surprising negotiating from Otis, they let him return to his body and he rallies the gods once again against Tassa and her pantheon. More fun stuff happens, they go to the Olympics, Heracles is hot for Mythil, they all fight some chimeras, and it all culminates in one big fight between Mythil and Tassa, where
Oh,
Tassa
yeah.
gets the full multiversal orb back and uses it to cheat in what was supposed to be a fair one-on-one fight, so Otis kinda cheats too. I mean, really, he just cheats to undo Tassa's cheating, but whatever. He
It's a
lets
cheat to a
himself
cheat.
get stabbed by Tassa just so he can get close to her, then gets Eldrorok's help through Suriastra to zap the multiversal orb away from Tassa. Without that thing, she and Mythil is on
There it
pretty
goes.
even footing. Mythil is better. Still, because he got stabbed real bad, Otis would have been toast. But Tassa ends up making a deal with Mythil to save Otis's life. The God Overseer powers for M308 come with some pretty sweet healing powers, so
Oh, yeah.
Tassa surrenders the God Overseer powers to Otis in exchange for Mythil letting Tassa live, so long as she leaves and never comes back to
Get the
M308
hell
again.
out.
She's semi-fine with that because the multiversal orb got zapped out of that realm anyway, so she goes looking for it, presumably finds it soon after, but at least Otis and Mythil's universe is safe from her. And Otis is left in charge as the new God Overseer.
Oh,
that
yeah.
helped a lot of the gods get on board with being nice to each other and not having so many wars between each other.
Back when this actually first happened, I started calling Otis the god of cooperation or something like that. I don't honestly remember. It's been a long time, but yeah, he pretty much rose from a mortal to a god and has an incredible wife. Oh, and an incredible granddaughter.
So the whole world starts becoming a lot more peaceful. Otis
don't
also
know anything about his
conveniently
kids.
got the Overseer's halted lifespan dealio, meaning his God Queller girlfriend, yeah, he and Mythil got all romantic and whatnot, wouldn't have to watch him age out of being alive. Thousands of years later, thanks to Ares showing up in the modern day for some stories, and at the end of Mythil Ethel, we know that Mythil and Otis are still alive and kicking in the modern day.
Hell
and
yeah.
that they had kids. We also figure out later that they have grandkids too, when one of them shows up in the Trismegistus Academy storyline. Speaking of which,
Let's
let
go.
us now get into the Trismegistus Academy storyline. This story follows the youngest members of the Shop Gang, Jake Tajin, Anna Fens, and Niseko Kuznet, cousin of my buddy Vasilia, along with some
Oh,
new characters
okay.
in a competing superhero school storyline.
That's what's
The
coming
notorious villain of this story is Eloise Ludum, whom I'm astounded hasn't come up yet today since she's been a thorn in the side of the Shop Gang for a while now. She's been around for as long as
she's
Tassa,
kinda
and
dead now.
actually is the
Haha.
overseer of the universe Tassa was the overseer of before she hopped over to M308. There is some undefined beef between Tassa and Eloise, but it probably comes from the fact that Ludum basically
Oh god, I just thought it sounded terrible. What would it be if this woman was actually the mother of Tulsa? Oh, now, of course, it wouldn't be in this body, because even as she has stated, and she has been reborn multiple times, but that would be terrible if this was the mother of Tulsa.
wiped out her whole universe so she could turn her realm, Z009, into an interdimensional Hunger Games for the entertainment of other overseers. She'd send scouts out to find different types of competitors and bring them in to fight to the death. Unfortunately for her, Dresden wiped out most of her clientele, so she decided to pivot and
Sorry,
start a
bye-bye.
superhero school, or more accurately, supervillain school, planning to use it to compete with an old rival of hers, Evangeline Trismegistus. Evangeline, about a decade earlier, had made a school of her own, called the
10
Trismegistus
years ago,
Academy
huh?
for Heroic Enlightenment, or TAHE, to educate and help raise future generations of interdimensional superheroes who could make the multiverse a safer and better place while becoming genuinely happy and well-adjusted people. Jake, Anna, and
Very
Niseko
nice.
were all part of an experimental class at that school called
Called the Mavericks.
They were the first class of kids to come to the school after the age of 7 to start their education. Evangeline got word of Ludum starting a school and wanted to keep an eye on Ludum, and was hoping to find a way to shut down Ludum's school. So she made a risky-bisky decision to arrange a competition between the Trismegistus Academy and Ludum's Academy for Fearsome Fighters.
The
or
Laugh Academy.
LAFF. A lot of
Tahei
individual
versus
storylines
Laugh.
happen with the students at the LAFF and at Tahei, a lot of which are pretty interesting, but they ain't exactly on a need-to-know basis to understand stuff that's coming up.
Yeah,
So you
some
can just
things
watch
hidden,
the
though.
actual series if you want to know more. But the essentials are this. Jake is generally considered the leader of the Mavericks. He and Anna is a couple now. One of Ludum's students, Katas, aka Tale Fanimo, is the granddaughter
Yep.
of Mythil and Ortis Fanimo from Mythil Lethal, and a new character, Waru Umarek, came into the Eldrin multiverse in this current life and storyline by reincarnating after he died in the Starseed Psyche universe.
Yep.
And unlike most folks, he actually does have a full memory of
Died to an explosion, if I remember correctly.
his past life. And he's also convinced that he's in a young adult novel, so he kinda breaks the fourth wall, but in a different way from how I usually do.
Yeah, a
he
little
does
thing
technically
here,
have
though.
a very brief appearance in Chapter 1 of Starseed Psyche, or at least his hand does when he reaches out through an elevator to smack the main character.
Yeah, I actually remember when I overheard in Waru's backstory about that. I was like, wait, hold on. I think I remember that. I pulled up this. I went through it. I found the exact moment. I was like, oh, that was him! That was him! I saw geeking the hell out.
Of Starseed in the face. But anyway, we'll get to more Starseed Psyche stuff later. Anyway, like Waru and Tale and one of the leads of the Trismegistus Academy storyline, Alsaya Lamani, a lot of Ludum's students realize that she's kinda the worst during this
She's a
tale,
psycho
and they
bitch.
start conspiring with the Mavericks and folks at Tahei to take Ludum down. In the last third of this story, they thought they were going to put this plan into action at a combat tournament between the two schools. But once the Mavericks and some Tahei folks got into Ludum's dimension for this tournament, Ludum revealed that she'd tricked them all, and this was just going to be another
crap.
one of her death arenas between the best students she's got and the Maverick kids, in a fight to the death for the entertainment of some of Eloise's other students, some overseers who is still alive, and 3 of the Archon demons.
Oh,
the
yeah.
psychological thriller Archon demon, Psychopedalict, the monster movie one, Kaijagrex, and the romance one, Romilisect. All of whom end up taking a lot of joy in watching it get revealed to Ludum that lots of his students actually want to take it down. Although Psychopedalict wasn't too thrilled when he realized one of those kids, who'd infiltrated Ludum's school and was trying to take it down, was also one of the
Off-screen.
film fatales, who Psychopedalict thought he'd chucked all of them out of the multiverse. This kid's name is Offscreen Alex, who's named and designed after a real-life legend who used his wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation to come and hang out and spend the day with Popcross. Anyway,
That was
things
really
get
cool.
real messy, but ultimately, after a brief death and resurrection by Jake, they was all able to take Ludum down. Jake did lose an arm, and
I was
he
just
broke
about to
his
say.
gem of the angelic that gives him his healing superpowers, but somehow that actually made his powers better, despite the fact that he wasn't able to grow himself back a new arm. Now he's got a sort of glowy one made from the gems.
That is a
Ludum gets
shame,
a tongue
though.
chopped off, she gets locked up in the RAS Foundation, and her overseer powers is taken away by Toralei and is given to Evangeline Trismegistus, who is now
Ooh,
using
kick-ass.
Ludum's realm and her school as a sort of extension of Tahei. The LAFF students who had helped take down Ludum were brought to the main Tahei campus in its main universe of H333 and were made the new Mavericks, or Dark Mavericks as Waru likes to call them. The actual
Waru.
original Maverick class are now also being allowed to go out on missions like the Shop Gang would to start fighting some of the Archon's forces, having proven themselves capable by taking down Ludum.
Damn right
the last
they
bit of
have.
what I consider to be the important info going forward is that in the ending battle kerfuffle of this storyline, the Archon Kaijagrex was able to kidnap one of the LAFF students, Khalida Jackal, who it turns out was a spy for Tassa in her new Imperium Pantheon,
Yo,
which
yeah.
currently consists of a cyberpunk Zeus, a demonic Anubis, who's Khalida Jackal's old man, a version of the goddess
father.
Freya who took out her world's Norse pantheon, and a version of Pele who stole the powers from her fellow gods, messed up her
Yep.
world real good, then got a bad case of brain rot. They'll all be fun to get to
Brain
know in
rot.
Pantheon Reapers. In the post-credit scene of Triz Academy, Eldrorok is torturing Khalida to get her to fess up to where Tassa is.
Well,
Eldrorok
is she?
really looking forward to taking Tassa down. But alrighty, woof,
Oof.
this is a lot. I mean,
Still
90%
one more.
of the audio for these 3 videos was recorded in one day. But we can keep it rolling now. We gotta keep going and moving on to
Rolling.
Fear of the Demon Hunters.
Oh,
This story
really?
is basically a Rava, aka Fear herself's, redemption arc. It probably would have been a storyline starring Koshmar and Noroi, or Mara, if Pop had decided to start writing longer original series about 3 years earlier, but Mara had gone through too much emotional growth to lead this series. We needed someone a little more insecure, so a new character popped
And
up
boom.
named Vivian Sabraya. She lives in Fear's world working for a group called the Predator Coalition of Demon Hunters, who exist purely to hunt the demons that Arava has spent the last
pretty much another group of like the SCP Foundation, but going after demons specifically.
Few hundred years making and sending after folks. Though remember, at the start of this series, Fia is seriously depowered, having had most of her abilities stripped away by the Archon demon Psychopedalict. Like Mara, Vivian was forced to get demon powers by Fia herself, but unlike Mara, Vivian actually let her demon side, called Hymenopoda, a hornet demon, murder a bunch of kids because she didn't know how to control it, or at least didn't have the willpower to stop it at the time. She was terrified that someone might find out what she did, she was racked with guilt, so she joined the Predator Coalition of Demon Hunters to kill demons and try to assuage her guilt, and of course she never told the other hunters about her powers, though she would occasionally sneak them in, using them on missions when no one was looking. Of course, joining the hunters kind of came back to bite her when Arava disguised herself as a normal kid and tried to use Vivian's secret to try and blackmail Viv into helping Arava infiltrate the hunters to steal back a weapon that Arava had made called the Demonitrix. This thing was created in Popcross's Ben 10 Demons episode, hence it sounding like a ripoff of the Omnitrix from Ben 10, and having pretty similar abilities. The wielder can channel the bodies and powers of demons that was made by Arava or was made by her subsequent demons, but controlling those powers is another story. If the demon's too powerful, there's not that much chance that you're going to be able to control them, not without a heck of a lot of training. Arava wants the Demonitrix so she can go after Psychopedalict and the other Archons for betraying her, which Viv sees as evidence that Arava wants to start redeeming herself for her past actions. Viv ends up convincing Arava to let Viv take and use the Demonitrix herself instead, and Arava grudgingly agrees. In the process of getting the Demonitrix, a fellow hunter named Jax joins up with them, having a fair amount of guilt himself over the fact that he wasn't too nice to Mara when she was part of the Predator Coalition of Demon Hunters and she got her demon form and everyone was kinda skittish around her even though she never really did anything bad with her demon powers. They also end up teaming up with one of the 12 Zodiac Angels, Capri. These Archangels was made by Arava before she decided to go the whole demon route, back when she was more directly trying to help people out before becoming disenchanted with humanity, then trying to indirectly help them by making scared people face demon attacks to overcome their fears or die trying. Side note, the Zodiac Archangels was actually the ones who made the Gems of the Angelic that Jake and Anna currently use to channel their powers.
I believe
you can learn more about
5.
the first time they got those in the Backcell storyline, but I ain't covering that today. We got too much to do. Some of those Zodiac Archangels stayed as angels, and some of them switched sides with Arava when she started going all Fia herself. And they became the original Demon Generals in Dimension D667. But nowadays, a more modern demon general named Zuphiathan, who frankly is easily the best character in this storyline and should have gotten more screen time, is hunting down Arava in this storyline because he knew she was depowered and he wanted to be the new head honcho of all demons in their world. So this whole tale basically follows Viv, Capri, Jax, and Arava training with the Demonitrix while fighting Zuphiathan's demons and being on the run from the Predator Coalition for a while, who found out Viv was working with Fia herself.
Mostly because Clayton over there really just wants to kill demons. And, I mean, you see that white sword he has? That was made by Capri.
And weren't too fond of the idea, since, you know, Arava is literally the reason the Predator Coalition needed to exist in the first place to hunt demons. Also, in this whole adventure, Mara's ex-boyfriend, Clayton Costas, who is a Predator Coalition member for a bunch of the story but gets kicked out for being too harsh, is trying to kill Viv and Arava. But in the process, he ends up getting nearly killed by Zuphiathan, and Viv channels the powers of a deceased demon general called Sorieklis to try and keep Clayton alive by making his body into a demon. It makes more sense in the context of the story, but ultimately he doesn't end up being able to get control of his body back.
Instead of him becoming a demon of feel, he became the first and only ever demon of pure rage. And as you can tell, he was literally a baboon. But it also didn't go out well at all, because, well, like you said, Clayton didn't try to take control of his body again.
Soul has a little bit of a cry, then he kicks the bucket and is deadzo for goodzo. Soon after that, Zuphiathan publicly attacks Denver, Colorado with an army of demons to call out Viv and Arava, which finally publicly reveals demonkind to that whole world. Only folks who got hunted by demons and hunted demons really knew about them before that. Now Capri manages to call in the other Zodiac Angels and even the Zodiac Demons for help in a fun little family reunion, but even that isn't quite enough to take down Zuphiathan.
Family hug!
Since Zuphiathan revealed demonkind to the world, lots of people is real terrified, and that fear is fueling him up, making him more powerful. After
Yeah, just
Viv
making
gets
him
injured
stronger.
and can't use the Dominatrix for a bit, Arava decides to take it for herself and channel the body of the Archon demon Psychopedalict. She made
Yeah.
that body, so technically it's a demon she can channel with the Dominatrix.
That was
I mean,
crazy.
she basically can't take any control over him. But, as she hoped, Zoofiathan, being the arrogant goof he is, goads Psychoperdalict into a scrap, and the Archon does end up killing
Look at that.
Zoofiathan in a fight that has some of
Ripped
the
off the
best
head.
banter on the channel, quite frankly. Zooey and Psycho should have had more screen time together before Zooey kicked the bucket. Anyway, Arava had also called in Dresden Oakland for help, now feeling very embarrassed about how she betrayed him to make the Archon's physical forms, since for a while he was basically her only friend. She gives a quick apology, then thankfully a longer one later, but asks Drezzy to bring Alexis, aka the Reaper, to D667 just before Arava started channeling Psycho's body. Arava was basically planning to sacrifice herself, channeling Psycho's body and hopefully holding him back a little bit from the inside so the Reaper could
2-for-1
axe him
kill.
for good. Instead, a deal was struck with Psycho to make most of the demons in Arava's world take a perpetual power nap, and to stop another assault Psycho's demons were running in another dimension at the time that the Shop Gang was having a hard time dealing with. So
Damn.
Psycho ended up getting away
Good
on
deal.
this deal, for now. Arava turned herself into Dresden, and now she's at the Redemption Arc Support Foundation, genuinely trying to be better. Thankfully, Viv also took a job working there so they could keep hanging out, and Viv has the
It is very
Dominatrix back
nice.
herself, being all healed up. Then, in the post-credit scene of that series, it's also teased that Vivian Sabraya is going to be coming back for Mytholethal Pantheon Reapers. Now,
Not sure if that ad cut off, I said, hell yeah.
before we wrap up, here is some other rapid-fire sort of stuff that has happened in one-off and shorter Multiverse Tales stories in the last little while.
Oh, thanks.
Alexis Jones's Reaper powers are basically being developed by the rings that float around her head, giving her challenges, and when she completes them in a literal solo leveling rip-off sort of way, she gets new abilities and
Cool.
levels up a strength. One new ability she's unlocked is called a Reaper Rise, where she can give someone else temporary big ol' power-ups, but only if she trusts that person
Ooh.
unconditionally. We first saw her use this in the two-part Powerhouse's Reaper Rise story, in which she and Ares from Mytholethal also briefly and grudgingly teamed up with the Archon Kaijigrex to try and take
Damn
down
it.
Tassa. But
Oh.
they fail and she gets away. Another
Damn,
little side
okay.
adventure involves sci-fi catman Bastar Terminax, the former murderer, poacher, bounty hunter turned alien tracker who thinks freaky little things like
And
xenomorphs
savior.
is adorable and refuses to kill nothing no more, other than sentient folks who consciously choose to do terrible stuff. Basically,
Yeah.
he just ain't killing animals now.
Be an ass,
He
you
was
get
raised
killed.
by a currently sorta mysterious, former notorious space warlord, Kahurgoth, who kidnapped and raised him as a kid Thanos style, giving him sci-fi tech
Ah.
upgrades and whatnot. He did this to a bunch of kids, including Harold the Herald, a former employee of Eloise Ludum, who's now a part-time RAS Foundation patient,
Right, that's how those siblings, because all three of them got Thanos.
and part-time Shop
That's
Gang
it.
member. Kahurgoth also did this to a hyena kiddo with a voice like a professional wrestler named Overkill. Overkill is also locked up in the RAS thanks to an adventure where Bastar teamed up with a character he once almost murdered, Aviva Orvad. Aviva's family are famously cruel poachers, the Orvad Huntsmen, and she used to do the same work as them but never really got into it,
Yeah, she
so
was kind of
eventually she
out of
abandoned
it.
them to work on the nature preserve planet Ishkanagan Major, the same one that Bastar works for, collecting rare and endangered animals and species to protect there. On her day one of working there, Aviva's
Literally.
family paid off Overkill to attack the place, and crazy sci-fi nonsense and adventures happened until they took down Overkill, and my buddy Vasilia came in to pick him up. Bastar hasn't met the whole Shop Gang, but he's got to connect to Vasilia, having met her through a group called the Secret Knights, who will probably come up again.
And not just that, but Vasilia really has a thing for him. Don't remember why, but she likes him. He does not like her.
At some point in the future. Also, the Sci-Five exist. They're a team of heroes we occasionally work with. Heath and Champ have the closest connection to them, but they haven't popped up in a while. Anyway, last
Sci-Fi,
note about
huh?
Bastar
Okay.
is that Vasilia can usually get any dude she wants to be into her. But she has sort of been hung up on Bastar because he ain't into her. Him not
Just
being into
not.
her, but her pining for him, is sort of the opposite dynamic of two characters in Starseed Psyche.
Ooh,
With the same voices.
Oh.
Interesting.
interesting
But
indeed.
we ain't getting into Starseed today. With Multiverse Tales all wrapped up, we can finally move on to In Another Multiverse in the next episode. Which means good old BS is done talking for today. That's right, I'm owning it now.
Yeah.
So we come to the end of part 2 of 3 Benny Summarizes Things episodes. The next one's
Well,
going
hey,
to focus on In Another Multiverse stuff, which is going to be getting tied in more and more with Multiverse Tales going forward, as well as the Realm of Hopeful Horrors, which Benny has actually done a YouTube short summarizing it, but I hadn't started properly animating him yet, and I could do a bit of a longer one as well. Not that you really need to know much going into that series, because it's really an anthology, but whatever, we've got the time now, so I'll do the summary. Anyway, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a question that I heard earlier this week that I think is a really great idea to ask yourself, revolving around your beliefs. And that's beliefs in any different kind of category: spiritual, political, religious, social, and that is the idea to ask yourself, do I believe this, or do I just believe that I'm supposed to believe this?
Ooh,
essentially to help you
good.
just dig a little bit deeper and think about, am I just believing something because I think other people want me to or have told me I'm supposed to, or do I actually deeply believe this? I hope that's an inspiring notion. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video on Monday. Goodbye.
That actually is a really good question, because that does get you thinking very, very deeply just about like anything he said. Alright everyone, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Until then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.